Thanks for coming and indulging me tonight. This trip I took, which you've already heard about quite a bit, was infamously long and drawn out, and I'm going to try not to make this talk that way. So, but it was a long trip. There's Kenosha, and there is North Shore Yacht Club. So I moved, to New York a couple of years ago, but my boat wasn't here. And so I had to get my boat here. And I was trying to decide how to do it. So the first obvious option was to truck it. And the estimates I got at the beginning of my search were in the neighborhood of $30,000 to truck my 26-foot sailboat. Way cheap. I could buy, 5 of my boats. So finally, I got a trucker who said she could do it for $100. Wait a minute. How much was it? $4 a mile. But she could only take me to the Jersey coast. But fine, $4 a mile, that comes to about $4,000. So, with tolls. So that sounded good. But then she was supposed to let me know when she could get in, and didn't come. And so then I got a phone call from a sailor I'd sailed with out of Long Beach Harbor. And he said that he wanted to do the trip by water with me. So I said, okay, great, let's do it. And the next day, the $4,000 trucker called. But anyway, I was committed. It sounded like a fun idea. I had talked myself into it. And so the water route, which this was the route up Michigan, down Huron, across Lake Erie, then through the Erie Canal and down the Hudson River to the East River, and it's about 50% more distance than trekking it. Spent a lot of the time going not in a direction I wanted to be going. So I got this Contessa 26 in 2013, and these are just a few highlights of things I did to the boat. But the first thing I did, I didn't have a working head. I didn't know how to work the stove. I didn't have anything, but I installed a wind vane monitor and used a bucket to pee in for years. And then I installed a new engine. For some reason, I got a master's license and a marine radio operator's permit, which I needed for this trip, if I was gonna land in Canada or talk to Canada. Finally installed a working head. I had to build deck mast supports because the Erie Canal, you have to take your mast down. I documented the boat with the US Coast Guard because I thought I might want to land in Canada, and got an MMSI. I rewired the entire boat. I pulled all my wires out, installed a second circuit board, and then I started acquiring gadgets. Chart plotter, tiller pilot, AIS, antenna switch, charging stations, battery monitor. And the thing is, I had always just day sailed this boat for 8 years or so. So the fore hatch was held down by gravity. I had never, from the time I got the fixer-upper, I never bothered to fix the fore hatch. So that's one reason I never did any cruising. And the engine hatch in the cockpit, same thing, it's just down there by gravity. So I had to fix that. Get chart books for the entire, I don't know if I had to, but I did get paper charts for the entire trip. So anyway, I had been working on all of this. I mean, every single thing, wiring, whatever, for me anyway, I had to do a lot of research and figure out how to do it and what to use and everything. So my crew was coming in the beginning of June. And by May 24th, this was the status of things. I had a hatch, I just hadn't put it in yet. Anyway, you can see the you can see the inside. You can see the inside of my boat right there. It's a 7.5 foot beam each of the quarter berths is 22 inches. I measured after about a week. It is a tiny boat. You can stand, if you're under 5'8", you can stand up right at the companionway, but otherwise nobody, even me, I had to walk around like this, past the companionway. So by May 28th, you have to have special requirements for documentation. My son and his wife came to visit that weekend, and I had to put them to work putting letters on the boat. And then I realized that cabin was way too small to hold the mast supports that I had built the year before to hold the mast. So June 11th and 12th, I loaded the mast supports into the car. Nobody could go with me because my car, like my boat, is very small. So drove the mast supports to Buffalo, came back, bought tons of food. I mean, tons, because I didn't know what this was going to be like. I mean, I had no idea. I was imagining several days at a time of being on the water. And so I bought way too much food to fit in the boat even.
And there's no grocery stores between there and here, right?
Right. Well, it turned out there were. Oh, I just put this in to show you. Yeah, I'm sure you know, but that's the Canadian border. So this is why I was thinking, oh, I need to be prepared to go to Canada, which I never did the trip. I never crossed. Well, I crossed the line, but if you don't land, it doesn't matter. Okay. So finally, June 14th, I left, and many sailor friends and others came, and the exciting, very exciting day of my life.
Was that your crew?
And this was 8 miles out. It was beautiful. We were going 6 knots. Oh, my crew was there. I have a picture of them coming. The wind was on our starboard quarter, broad reach. I mean, it was just gorgeous. And that was true for many days of this trip. What's that? Oh, I thought it was going to show you my wind vane, but no. There's Larry, he's 6'4", which, I mean, I had been on his Pearson with him, but I had no idea he was that tall. So, I mean, he had to walk at a right angle inside the cabin. I mean, the boat was way too small for him. It was so uncomfortable. Nevertheless, he went with me all the way to Cleveland. He didn't go the whole way, understandably, but he made it to Cleveland with just this kind of spirit. So I don't know how he did it, but there it was. And that night too, I'm not going to show you every day like this, but that first night, it was an almost full moon. Still, we had waves and wind behind us. We were just sailing beautifully, and there's the wind vane in action. I could never have made this trip without that wind vane. Going with the wind behind you, especially, it's so tiring to steer and make sure that you don't, get the wind in front. So that wind vane was just key. Never would have made it. So that first trip, we did go overnight. We did 100 miles. We're out on the water 24 beautiful hours. We were both complete wrecks. The head, it turned out, about mile 20, we found wasn't working. Well, that was the only thing that wasn't working that night. Oh, also, the cabin was way too full of food for either of us to lie down because I had just stuffed everything into the cabin. And the reason for that, I mean, there's no way what I brought could be stowed properly. There wasn't room. And, but the reason we left exactly when we left was we just had that weather window, which that does not happen on Lake Michigan that often, where you get, a perfect weather window for going 24 hours in the direction you want to go. So, but that first day, this is partially to explain why it took me 69 days to get from Kenosha to here. Anyway, that first day I had to locate Fire alarm or something?
No, it's a chairlift.
Oh, the
You just go
chairlift.
down.
So this day was like getting things together. I had to fill 2 deck boxes like that, full of stuff. All that stuff I rode down to the Great Loop cruisers on a couple of docks down and gave it all away. Then I loaded up a second deck box, just literally to make room so that we could actually sleep on the berths. And then the head, I had to, it couldn't be fixed. I had to take it out. I had to take a $300 Uber ride all the way down to Muskegon because we had gone so far. We were in the middle of nowhere. So anyway, got the head in, got the cabin sorted out, and finally headed out. And this was the next day again, winds right behind us, monitor wind vane steering the whole way. Right now it was just comfortable and gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, going up north on Lake Michigan. So these were our stops on Lake Michigan, as it turned out. That bottom one is Ludington, then we went to Manistee, Frankfort, Leland, and Charlevoix, and then up through the Straits of Mackinac into Lake Huron. We knew we had planned to go to Ludington. Larry, my crew, had a niece he wanted to see, and he was able to visit and tour while I was trying to make sense out of the boat. But you know, after that, it wasn't really possible to know how far we would go, and we'd have to see how the weather was, see where we could, you know, to see where we could get. And that was the thing about this trip that I didn't know. I guess experienced cruisers must know this, but a huge part of the work of it is just logistics. Every day, the logistics of figuring out, you get to a new port and where's a grocery store? Are you going to be able to get fuel somewhere? But you know, just lots of logistics. I mean, not to mention fitting into whatever crazy slip you might have found. Frank, where have we been? We've already been to, Manistee to Frankfort, yeah, and Frankfort to Leland. The wind began to kind of die on us, and so we did some motor sailing, and but still, it was pretty nice. The coast of Northeast Lake Michigan is just really beautiful. I mean, if you do get a chance to cruise Lake Michigan, that Northeast coast has wonderful ports because it's always been a prosperous area. Not heavily populated, but prosperous because of trappers, fishing industry, for various reasons. And I mean, this really became obvious to me when I saw the other side of Michigan, the coast of the west coast of Lake Huron, which has never been prosperous like that. So anyway, beautiful sand dunes and bluffs. And the port of Leland was absolutely wonderful. Unfortunately, I don't know why I took the pictures I did. Leland is a picturesque, beautiful, historic fishing town. I mean, so really worth visiting. Anyway, that was my coffee setup. I did pack a propane stove, which I never got out of its deeply hidden spot the whole trip. I didn't cook anything. I made coffee with cold water and an AeroPress. I don't know if you know what that is, but anyway, it's like a drip. Sandwiches, canned sardines, Triscuits, salad kits. Yeah, it started to get hot and the flies and dead fish were really pretty disgusting. I guess once you're motoring, and this boat is not a nice motorboat, my boat. It's, you know, it really becomes small and less fun when you're motoring. So there started to be a lot of motoring to get to Charlevoix. But boy, it was exciting to get to Charlevoix. And that was going to be the last stop before we got out of this lake. So I got these pictures of Niwen from a friend who caught me on the webcam. And she just texted him to me and said, "Welcome to Charlevoix." And I thought, oh, somebody who I can have a drink with. She must be at a bar right up on the hill. But she wasn't. She was in Kenosha. My crew, Larry, doesn't drink, so I was imagining I had someone to drink with. Anyway, for some reason, I took a picture of the inside of this marina. It's a lot of motorboats mostly. And then this Beaver Island ferry behind us. I don't know, in this picture, that ferry looked so small. It was huge and it was bearing down on me. And ferries were a bugaboo right through to New York Harbor. Anyway, it didn't run me down. So this was so exciting. June 25th, we'd been on the water since the 14th. And we finally got through the Straits of Mackinac into Lake Huron. This is looking back at the Mackinac Bridge. But, I mean, I don't know. It's hard to describe when you're cruising. Well, it must be that way if you're a hiker or whatever. But, it's just every day is beautiful, really, really hard work and really beautiful. But when you get to someplace, some milestone, it's just, every part of you is just singing. I was literally singing. So Lake Huron was way bigger than I thought it was. Stayed the first night way up at the top at Mackinac City, which is across the way from Mackinac Island, which is a beautiful tourist island, right under the bridge. And then we went to this series of ports. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ports to get through the lake. And only one of them was really short, from Rogers City to Presque Isle or Presque Isle. There's an Ohio Presque Isle and a Michigan Presque Isle, or vice versa. Oh, and there's one in Maine too. So, Mackinac City too. On the left are pictures of Mackinac. Well, on the top is Mackinac Island, a nice, fun place to visit. And then that other view is just a view from behind my boat on the bottom left. And those ferries. We had to time our exit because those ferries are coming in and out real fast. So we did get off on our way and had a really fun sail from Mackinac City to Rogers City. In fact, we had 20 knots and it was supposed to drop down, but then it didn't, it picked up. And by the time I was pulling into the slip, it was gusting 25 knots. And I got in. So Rogers City to Presque Isle, and then Presque Isle to Harrisville. Some nice sailing, a lot of motor sailing. We started losing wind. That picture of Niwen on the bottom left was taken by someone, some solo sailors. There's a Mackinac solo Mac race from Chicago to Mackinac, but then also from somewhere on Lake Michigan to Mackinac. So it just happened that we ran into a lot of solo sailors who I met and made friends with, and they gave me a lot of help for ports to stay in Huron. Huron, it has hardly any really good harbors. So it was, and a lot of the harbors are really shallow. So it's hard to find a place with depth. Anyway, one of them took that picture. So then we're in Harrisville, and first it was weather that kept us in, and then I actually something wrapped around the prop going through the strait just before the Straits of Mackinac, and felt it and ran backwards and seemed to have unwound whatever it was, and then we kept going. It never felt right. And so finally in Harrisville, I finally saw visually, yes, there's something down there on the wrapped around the prop. So I had to hire a diver. I mean, I did hire a diver. I should have had a mask and flippers. And the diver, yeah, anyway, it was a sail tie. So yes. Sadly.
And you were wondering where that was.
And also the wind vane gave out on that trip to Harrisville. So I spent some time, I had to order some parts, and that led me to, where to have it delivered. And I found a marina that I could have it delivered to in Detroit. So that kind of committed me to going to that marina, which turned out to be really interesting. And yeah, I had to order a new radar reflector that blew off on Huron. So finally, after 4 days, so I'm just trying to explain to you why this trip took so long, really. Whether, that was a long time in Harrisville, which, anyway. So the other problem was that we couldn't get any place that was a reasonable, good place to go to July 3rd. There were no place available. So I found a place that looked like it was going to be great, and amazingly had spots. So went there on July 3rd, and that was Harbor Beach. That's a picture of it on the top right, which it doesn't really do it justice. It has these big power plants, and you know why no one went there for the 4th. There were no fireworks. So, and it was 13 hours of motoring to get there. It was a long, long day of motoring to get to Harbor Beach. We didn't really want to go that far, but the July 4th problem. And then another pretty long day of motoring, not so long, to get to Port Sanilac. So really glad to get there. It was a thriving power boater place. But this picture of the Niwan at that slip. I mean, every slip, you just never knew what you were going to run into. And that was a slip with big, nasty siding on it that even my giant bumpers wouldn't protect the boat from. So, I had to tie it off on posts that were over on the other side. Those challenges are fun, but it's just really interesting. I mean, every day is just, yeah. So I made some stranger take my picture there. I don't know where Larry was. We were still speaking to each other. Amazingly. Oh, well, this resolution isn't the greatest, but that's like the bottom of Lake Huron on the top. And I really just wanted to show you the St. Clair River that comes off of Lake Huron at the top to that big lake in the middle. That's Lake St. Clair. And then the Detroit River runs down to Lake Erie. So Port Sanilac was our last stop before we were going to get to the very bottom of Lake Huron. We went to Port Huron, which is just into the St. Clair River and then up another river, the Black River, I think it was. So that was really, really exciting to say goodbye to Lake Huron now on July 6th and hello to the St. Clair River. Stayed in Port Huron, where it was over a half a mile each way to get to the showers and the toilets. My friends who sail the Mac from Wisconsin had told me to stay at the Huron Yacht Club. And for some reason, I went to the municipal marina, which was a huge mistake. Yeah. And then coming out of the Black River onto the St. Clair, I almost T-boned a tanker. I was so happy. Everything was just so great. And then I looked up and I realized there was a tanker coming right at the mouth of the river. Worked out okay. It was so fun to be on a river after weeks and weeks and weeks of being on the lakes, to be on a river and have things moving by on each side real fast and fascinating sights. It was real, the Canadian side was all real industrial, and then the US side, which is the middle side, was all really verdant and bucolic looking. So not what I would have expected. Going down the St. Clair River has a strong current. So I guess I didn't put anything in about my speeds, but we were going like, I think we were, like 8 knots or, you're just zooming. Another reason why it was fun to be on the river, just zooming down because we're going in the direction. These, the lakes are all, I'm going with the current of the lakes this whole trip. Lake Michigan goes into Lake Huron, and Lake Huron feeds into the St. Clair River, which is why the current's so strong because it funnels down. But and then that feeds into Erie. So the way I'm going, I always have a current helping me along. Anyway, so we got to Detroit, and this marina that I had ordered had things sent to, turned out, unbeknownst to me, but I found when I got there, we pulled into this marina and it was run entirely by women. That's the harbor master down in the bottom right, who took a picture of us as we were leaving. But for a female sailor, that was just like mind-blowing. And I don't think that's why Larry told me he was going to have to go back to LA. But that was when he let me know he had to get back. And he did. I never thought this trip was going to be so long, and I had told him it was going to be shorter. So, but he was going to stay with me till Cleveland. And we walked around. So then there was bad weather on Lake Erie, which that happens a lot. I mean, the bad sailing conditions, it was really big waves and big winds. And I had actually called our next stop in Lake Erie, Put-in Bay, and the harbor master said, have you looked at the weather report? And so I thought, okay, I won't muscle through it. So had to wait a couple of days, and took one day to walk around Detroit. So, okay, there I was goofing off. We went through the Detroit Art Institute. And I was looking at my pictures last night, and for some reason, this was the only art picture I took called Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And this woman just, that wasn't really how I felt though. Anyway, at this marina there was somebody next to me who kept using my rudder to stop he just got a powerboat, and he kept, every time he came out of the slip, he would use my rudder and wind vane apparatus to stop his boat so he could go forward. So I left that marina after 2 days, and the only place I could go was, I had to go down to the bottom of the Detroit River and then back up the Detroit River on the other side of Grosse Ile to get a place where there was enough depth. I could not get anything around Detroit really that was deep enough for a sailboat. So it's all power boats there. So I did that, and actually got a couple more pictures of Niwen from friends that we made in Frankfurt way back on Lake Michigan. And they lived in Detroit. So we had been texting, and they came out in their power boat, and we went around the water together a bit. So that was fun. Hectic though, getting back up the Detroit River. So finally, we were ready to go into Lake Erie. July 11th, we made it to Put-in Bay, which is a beautiful, beautiful, very kind of touristy island in Lake Erie. Then we went to Cleveland, Fairport, Conneaut, Conneaut. Do you know Ohio?
I was in Conneaut for strike duty.
What?
I worked for the railroad. I had to do strike duty in Conneaut.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, the railroad was following us, the Lakeshore Limited Railroad, all the way along. Every one of these ports, I'd hear that, and it goes by at night. I heard it every night. Erie Yacht Club, Dunkirk Yacht Club was very cool. One of my favorites. And finally, July 20th in Buffalo. Lake Erie, there were a couple of really challenging days in terms of winds and waves. On the left, that's our trip into Put-in Bay. And yeah, we had to reef partway into partway there. It got really pretty windy and waves coming from two different directions. But that's the thing about Lake Erie, it's so shallow, the shallowest of the Great Lakes. And there's a lot of shipping traffic on Lake Erie, a lot, which in those shallow waters creates waves that start running into each other and making just horrible, scary mess. Well, scary to me. Yeah, although, yeah. Although what happens with Erie though is that there's a long skinny lake and long skinny shallow lake. And so if the wind's coming from the east and it's, it gets quite the fetch. Yeah. And then there's shipping traffic. It's
How much do you draw?
Sorry?
How much do you draw?
4 feet.
It's shallower than that? No.
Oh, no. We weren't running aground in Lake Erie, although it did get, I forget, I was amazed at how shallow it did get. But no, we weren't running aground, but we were hitting a lot of big waves because in shallow waters, it kicks up. And well, that's just a shot of an AIS screen. Just partly I wanted to say that I was really glad I had AIS. I mean, it was really an important tool on the lakes, not in New York Harbor, not a good tool, but because the alarms just go off constantly. But on the lakes, it was really helpful. And it tells you so much about the ship, and you probably all used it, but it tells you its course over ground. It tells you how long to impact, and it's just very wonderful. So made it into Cleveland, and it's just really fun when you see a city skyline, or for me it was. So. And Larry's really happy because he's gonna finally get off this teeny boat with this crazy woman. So that's a nice place in Cleveland that I was parked for a couple of days because Larry to an airplane and reprovisioned, got George, who, this was kind of like a miracle. Larry told me he was gonna have to get off, and George sold me my boat, and he lives in Buffalo, and I had bought the boat from him and had it trucked from Lake Erie to Kenosha. So he was really excited at the prospect of getting on the boat and coming through Lake Erie with me. And that was great. I was very happy to have the company. So we got on in Cleveland and off we went. One thing I enjoyed about Lake Erie was, I mean, there's a lot of industry along the coast of Lake Erie, and we had several ports. We had to go up various rivers to get to the ports. So it was just really interesting going up into these towns. I think that one on the bottom left is, anyway, I think that's the town where the tartans were first designed and built. So anyway, it's kind of fun just meeting people at restaurants, and well, as it is when you travel. So, I don't know why I put in this just more happy sales. I mean, putting these together just made me want to get on that boat right away. Dunkirk Yacht Club. I just wanted to mention that that's their deck, and they painted a compass rose. But they were very friendly, and the club themselves builds all their slips and do everything. It was a very, very cool club to visit. I visited we stayed at Lake Erie Yacht Club too, which was more of a gold button type of yacht club. Somehow I didn't take any pictures there. They had never had a female Commodore. I was looking, they had a huge wall. It's an old, really nice. They were really friendly. Don't get me started on women in sailing. So, so we got to Buffalo, and I turned 70 that week. So I did take a day off and walked around. My family put me up at the best hotel in Buffalo. And between my children and my siblings, they put me up at that hotel for a week. So that was great. I was so happy there. And that's Niwen with her mast already down on the Buffalo River, which Buffalo is a really cool city to visit. I was so excited to be in New York and just thought everything was wonderful.
Not really New York.
It is. It really is.
I see a small boat harbor, isn't it?
The small boat harbor. That's the Buffalo River. And this is a marina that I really liked for taking my mast down. I actually ended up renting a car, driving up to the marina at Tonawanda that I had originally planned to have my mast taken down, and drove my supports down to this marina. And it's in my notes, the name of it, I can't remember. But yeah.
That granary there is supposedly very famous in those efforts to make sure.
Yeah, that damage I think had just happened recently. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I know. General Mills is there. General Mills is still there churning out. I took a lot of pictures of that area because I liked the old industrial, or yeah, the old manufacturing mill architecture. Oh, okay. So after I was a couple days, I was a week in Buffalo. Finally got up really early and headed up the Black Rock Canal. And the Black Rock Canal takes you on the side of the Niagara River so that you don't. Yeah, I mean, the falls are above me, right? The Black Rock, yes, south and before. Yeah. Above, yes, upriver.
I used to
Play?
Yeah, I used to live in Buffalo.
Oh, you did? It's really New York, right? I mean, when I was, the minute I got there and was talking, the people are different. They're New Yorkers, they are. Anyway, yeah, my first lock was on the Black Rock Canal. I was so nervous, and I might have bumped the bow, but it went okay. The scariest part was I wasn't sure, the lock has a part that that you're supposed to go into, and then another part that controls the water in other ways. And I found it really hard at first to figure out where the lock was in that setup. Yeah, it's really hard to see the entrance to the Erie Canal. They don't have a sign. And if you miss it, you do go over the falls. I mean, that was the night before. I was just thinking, I hope I turn right before the falls. So.
There are no signs on the road.
No, I know. And so is that the entrance there? Yeah. That on the top right. I mean, that's the entrance to the Erie Canal. I mean, they could do something. What way too subtle. If I hadn't had the chart plotter to show me where I was, I would have missed that turn for sure. Down the falls.
There's a wire above the fall.
I think I've seen that in cartoons.
It's a real thing.
Is it? That's good to know. That's good to know. Yes. Anyway, so I was on the Erie Canal from the 27th to the 11th. What is that? 15 days. Oh, yeah, I put it on the slide. Yeah. So I didn't mess around too much, but it's impossible to go fast, especially on my boat. There was one day that I had to stop because it was just dangerously hot. And another day I stopped, I think because of fog on the Oneida Lake. Anyway, 35 locks and 2 more, the Black Rock and the Troy Canal, and 16 lift bridges. So you're never lonely on the Erie Canal. I just wanted to tell you that New York State has a great website with information that you need. And they also, I think the Canal Corporation, I made friends with people who live on the canal, have a house on the canal, and they were complaining bitterly about the Canal Corporation. But for travelers, I mean, it is great. They have, they have information that they give you, and they're just really friendly, and will answer any question. And so the procedures were kind of intimidating with all the lift bridges and locks. Oh, and also floodgates. But anyway, I was able to look up on the site, and I did constantly, dynamically, okay, where am I? What bridge is this? How long till I have a lock, or what have I got next? The lift bridges are all on the western side of the canal, and then there aren't that many locks, and then the eastern side of the canal has got a lot of locks. This website where it lists, Albany, the eastern end of the canal as mile 0, and every tour book, anything that you read about the Erie Canal, it's always starting at the east and going west. So when you're going east, everything is backwards. Anyway, the online site is good. There are no charts for the western side of the Erie Canal, no nautical charts. So you really kind of have to, you've got to figure out other ways to, well, it doesn't matter. You can't take a wrong turn, luckily. But there's one guidebook that everybody uses, Skipper Bud's Erie Canal guidebook. And that tells you, all about where are good places to tie up on the wall. There are no, very few harbor type of places. You tie up on the wall of the canal, and the ports are pieces of wall that have bollards and things. So the locks actually turned out to be really easy. That first one was a little rocky, but then someone from the Canal Corporation came down and talked to me and told me to move my bumper farther back. And then once I was perfectly balanced and knew where to hold the boat, it was easy as pie to hold it with one hand and have the boat stay off the wall. My big bumpers were key, though. Always really fun. And there's some friends I made that I'm still in touch with. I'm sure they'll come sailing. I made a lot of friends who I'm counting on coming to sail out here, but all really helpful. There's always an issue of fuel on the Erie Canal if you're diesel. So I bought an extra can at the beginning and just made sure I would fill those. There was one time when a lift bridge operator drove me to a land gas station to fill up my cans, But other than that, I was able to keep dieseled up. It was just really so pretty. I mean, every day was pretty, and sometimes it was rural, sometimes it was there were houses, really pretty houses. Yeah.
Just a real quick question. What's the biggest boat you saw on Erie Canal, you know, when you're going? Because that doesn't look like it's very wide.
It's not very wide, and even more, it's not very deep. There's a limit on their website there's a limit. I mean, so big commercial vessels aren't on the Erie Canal. Yeah. It's the most boats that I saw were kayakers. And I think, I mean, for me, that would be the way to do the Erie Canal. It'd be really fun. It was not fun boating wise. You know, the boating experience, motoring on a sailboat through the Erie Canal is not fun in that sense, you know, the way boating is supposed to be. But seeing it, you know, seeing it from a slow vessel was really fun. And anyway, it was mostly, there were, well, you can see the size of these power boats, a lot of power boaters, a lot of great loopers go through, but not, most of them don't come this far west on the canal. They go up the Oswego Canal, I think it's called, and skip most of the Erie.
Is the speed limit, there's no 5-mile wait or anything like that posted?
There's a speed limit of, there are a couple of different speed limits at different parts of it. It's not wake, but speed that they talk about, and they really do ticket people who don't. It was like a dagger. No, it made me really mad, actually. I saw a lot of speed limits that said 30 miles an hour, and I could not. I mean, yeah, 4.5 knots was about what it was. And that was with the current, because again, I had a little current helping me. So I could get up to 5. But anyway, people who went, but a lot of the time the speed limit is 5 miles an hour. My son came at the very end for a day to go into the Hudson, which was fun. Let me speed this up here. Oh, they're my friends. They came and actually went with me for 2 days. So it was really great to have company for that. Although I felt guilty because it was really hot. I mean, the temperature of the water in the Erie Canal was 94. And the air temperature was really hot during the day. And then that boat is really hot and doesn't cool off at night when it's keel and when it's sitting in 94-degree weather. So
Right.
those were,
It's fighting to make hot cocoa.
so those were really good friends. I mean, everyone who went on that trip with me, it was so uncomfortable physically. And then this video on the left is, it just happened that the harbor master at this port was talking to her brother on the phone, and he was making fun of how little work she had to do. And she said, no, it's busy here. And she started videoing this boat coming into the dock. So I get this video of myself landing my boat, which I really like. And the people catching me are two other people I had met a few towns up, and were yelling at me to park right there. And I was yelling, I can't fit. So halfway down the canal, about the Mohawk River merges into the canal, so it's no longer a strictly man-made thing. I bought a fan, an electric fan, which changed my life, and that's it on the lower left, a little $10 fan. And then finally, at the end, got to the Hudson River, and man, that was really, really a satisfying thing to do. That's Waterford, the last stop before you go out into the Hudson. And this is the most beautiful spot. It's where the Mohawk meets the Hudson. And so the towns there are really old. It's been, and picturesque. Oh. So my son came to help out for one day, and it was really fun. That was the last lock, the Troy lock. And the marina we went to Catskill, which was where I could get after that last low bridges and lock. So got my mask put back up at Catskill. I had to wait there 4 days, just the guy wouldn't, I couldn't get them to do it. So I wasn't goofing off. Yes, deck step, yeah. So finally the Hudson, which you guys know better than I know, the Hudson River Museum has docks right in front of the museum. So it was really fun to pull in front of the Hudson River Museum. Cornwall Yacht Club was really nice, mostly power boaters, but there was a sailor who invited me home for dinner with his wife, and they gave me dinner there. So really nice. Nyack Boat Club I was so close then. This is the Hudson River Museum, couple of shots. They have a wooden boat school there and classes. You can take a weekend class in making this type of skin boat that they make, or they have other classes, flute making, or I don't know, guitar, whatever. But really neat little museum, and there's Newen happily in front of the museum. That's a giant wooden ice boat. They have they couldn't put the mast on display. The thing is just huge. I couldn't get it all in my picture. And then finally got down to Nyack. The trip between between Cornwall and Nyack that's beautiful, just through Bear Mountain and West Point, and just not to be missed. The Hudson was sometimes tricky to navigate, and at one point I was looking through navigating down the Hudson. The buoys were really far apart between Nyack and New York, and I got my binoculars looking for a buoy, and all of a sudden I saw the skyline of New York, and it's just the tiny little gray hazy rectangles, but it was great, and made it here. I mean, those ferries in the harbor were horrible, horrible, but you guys have all done that. So it really, really meant so much to me when I heard on the radio, Newen, can you hear me? Or Newen, can you see me? And seeing some of you guys out there, and then a bunch more of you on the patio. It was really, really wonderful. So thank you.
Question.
Oh, yeah.
What was the longest trip you took by yourself before this event, and with another crew member?
Just by myself? Just day sailing. I mean, nothing. No.
The longest single trip with another person on your way.
The longest single trip. I mean, decades ago I cruised, for like a week at a time on Lake Champlain. But on Lake Michigan, up to Milwaukee, up to Racine, but mostly it was very much my joy just to go out. But really, I just ended up day sailing anyway. This whole trip, it was just.
One overnight, your first night.
I think we all can understand having to plan for the weather and having extra days built into our schedule, because weather can always stop you. It can always happen. And how long did you think that your trip was going to take originally?
I thought I should be here by mid-July.
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here. You made it. Anyway, my name is Carolyn Predmore, and I'm the Admiral on Magic. Richard's the captain. I'm the Admiral. The Magic is our fourth boat, our first catamaran. So we've had 3 prior monohulls before this. So we've had some experience with boating. Didn't really seem like it when we picked up the boat, but we had experience, over 40 years experience of sailing. We bought the boat. We left the one marina that it was at, took it over to Port Annapolis Marina and had it hauled immediately to have the bottom painted. And we left to go home for a week and pack everything up, all our boat gear, to bring down to Annapolis the following week. Unloaded the car, unloaded the rental, got on the boat. Now we've had a survey for the boat, so we know the air conditioner doesn't work, but gee, everything else ran when it was tested. So it was about 95 degrees at night on the boat. Richard spent 8 hours trying to get Chesapeake gunk out of the air conditioner. So our boat is not like Ann's. It has just about everything on it, except for a water maker and a washing machine. Those we don't have yet. But he managed to get the mud out of the air conditioner so that by midnight, we had an air conditioner that worked on the starboard side. So that was good. But you have to understand, we're bringing this boat home, having just picked it up. And we go. So this is for Mary Lou. This is the Annapolis Yacht Club's flower garden here. So they have flowers, and we thought of you when we saw it. Anyway, this is a chart of our entire trip. We only went like 200 miles, and we planned to take 5 days to do it. Oh, okay. Our boat, when we bought it, was called Anchor Management. And this is where we had it hauled at Port Annapolis.
We're back.
They're a pretty well set up marina. They had a lift that was wide enough to pick us up.
Somebody tell them the video's not working?
Apparently our video's not working. Well, all right, let me try again. Okay, the video's not working. Share screen, share screen, share. Now we'll try again. Now play from start. We haven't
It's working.
Thank you. Okay, so this is, we had it hauled. That week that it was being painted, we came home and started sewing. We had 3 large bean bags that didn't really fit us, so we converted them into cushions. Sailrite is now my best friend because I buy material from them and zippers and all kinds of stuff. So we made 3 cushions and a front window. There was no window at the helm. The guy we bought it from had no idea where the window went, but there was no window. So we bought the clear plastic from Sailrite and made a window in that week that we were home. And we came back to pick up the boat, found that we had a passenger. This was on the outside of the hull, and Richard was thrilled. He had a pet. Named it very imaginatively Froggy. And I thought we would never see Froggy again. Yes, well, we got on the boat on June 15th, left Port Annapolis Marina and went to the next marina to get diesel. Port Annapolis doesn't have a gas dock. So we went up to the gas dock. Both engines were running. This was great. We turned them off. We were talking to the attendant and filled up, went to turn on both engines and the port engine wouldn't start. And the attendant at the dock says, "Does it always do this?" We just had the boat for 5 minutes. I mean, I have no idea whether it always does this. No, it doesn't always do this. It passed the inspection. So Richard looks at me and I look at him and says, "Well, what do we do?" And I said, "We have 2 choices. We can go north on one engine, which we have done on every boat previous to this, or we go back to where we were because that's a marina and we can get parts." Port Annapolis Marina is within walking distance of Bert Jabbins, which is another large purveyor of marine goods. You can get parts, you can get fluids, you can get all kinds of things. I said, "I think we go back to where we were." So we called them on the phone. They said, "Yeah, put up on dock D where you were." And sure. So we go back, we tie up, and Richard goes to talk to everybody in the yard. They have a diesel mechanic, but he's booked for 2 weeks. I go to the giant food store. I get food. I figure we're going to be there for 2 weeks. By talking to everybody in the yard, they give him ideas of what to try. And he tries just about everything. He gave me a list of the things that he tried. He changed the sail drive gear oil. He checked clamps and hoses and finally found that there was corrosion on the ground connections to the port engine. Now, the reason that there's corrosion on the ground connections to the port engine is because the outside shower line runs through that hull and it was dripping. It doesn't drip anymore, but it was dripping. So we got rid of the corrosion, engine started. Yes. So that was Thursday night. So we said, okay, we're leaving Friday. We left Friday, June 17th. And this is where we left Annapolis and we went up to Chesapeake City, Maryland. We could have stopped at Georgetown. We were a couple different places along the way that we could have stopped. But Chesapeake City, first of all, had 2 restaurants. That seemed like a big deal at that time. You know, at least we could get off the boat, having been working on it constantly. And it was a definite point. We would have made it to the canal. It seemed like a real accomplishment. And we made time. We were motor sailing, sometimes only sailings, but a lot of time motor sailing because it was hot and it was not that windy, at least not steadily windy. And there I am. Look, don't I look very happy. I have my PFD on. We're going under the Bay Bridge Tunnel at Annapolis. There's the frog. The frog is a tree frog, but has suddenly decided it is now a boat frog. Our winch handle holder is right about here. And for months, that frog lived in the winch handle holder. He was happy. You know, what can I, this is the frog. Richard wants to show you the frog's alive. I was not happy. Anyway, this is the beginning of the Chesapeake and Delaware Canal. This is where the work boats hang out. Froggy. Froggy. We're not that imaginative in our household. It's Froggy. Pardon? No, well, no, not as long as that. Well, you know, in the canal, there were flies, and by Cape May, there were a lot of flies. So I actually bought fly paper in Annapolis that worked a charm. Yeah, the Chesapeake's full of flies. And here we are heading in, we're in the canal and we're heading to Chesapeake City. You can see that there is a restaurant on one side, on the port side, and then you can go into the little mooring field on the starboard side, which is where we were headed, up over that side. And here's the mooring field. The charts say that it holds about 10 boats. I think that's very optimistic. I think that you want to be there relatively early to make sure that you get anchor space in this little mooring field. But, you know, it suited our purpose. We had a little problem with the bridle. Apparently, the people who outfitted the boat looked online to see how the bridle should be set up, and it's wrong online. The picture by Leopard is wrong, so that you can't reach the bridle to hook it onto the anchor chain from anywhere on the boat. You had to get into the dinghy to attach the bridle to the anchor chain, which is okay when you've dropped the anchor down and you're setting the anchor. It's not great when you're bringing the anchor up. Yeah, we were drifting for a little bit while we were bringing the anchor up the next morning, because of course the wind was up at that point. So then we were somewhat loose in the mooring field as we're trying to unhook this bridle from the anchor chain. Our neighbors loved us. You know, all we could say is we'll never be here again. You know, I'm sorry. 2 days we've had this boat again. What can I say? So then we started back out on the Delaware Canal. I drove while Richard fixed the bridle. It wasn't that it was too short. It was just in the wrong place. And so he reattached it so that the next night we could use the bridle appropriately. Anyway, so we left Chesapeake City, Maryland, and we went around Cape May and into, ran around the point at Cape May and into Cape May. There is a Cape May canal, but it's got a 50-foot fixed bridge. We're 61 feet tall. I would have loved to have chopped 11 feet off that day, because it went from 15 knots to gusts of 35 plus. By the time we got down to the bottom of the Delaware River in the Delaware Bay, we looked up, you know, places of refuge. Only there were none. So it doesn't look that bad. I'm in my coat that I bought for Maine. It was blowing so much. My PFD on, I'm happy. I figured Richard will get me through this. And our wave action. But even better, this is a barge coming up river, and it's the waves, it was blowing, it was busy. Richard took over the helm about halfway down in the Delaware Bay because it was tearing the wheel out of my hands. There was so much wave action going on. It was, if you remember Father's Day weekend, it was just blowing a gale. Yeah, and that's when we were doing this, the Saturday of Father's Day weekend. And so we were coming down here. We got to about here, and these are shoals. And they say 15 feet. And I said, can't we go any closer? Richard had me call the Coast Guard to find out how true are the charts. We only draw 4 feet. That's one thing we have in common with them. We only draw 4 feet. So if it says 7, we should be fine. And Richard says, call the Coast Guard. So I call the Coast Guard and I say, how old are your charts? I said, they're a year old. That's good. You know, and do you have your I said, yes, I have my PFD on. This is actually, the shoals are, if they say 15 feet, they're 15 feet. You should be fine. I said, you're sure? Because otherwise I'm calling you later to come get us. He says, no, you'll be fine. I said, okay, well, while I have you on the phone, what about anchoring by the Coast Guard, by your Coast Guard station? Because we understand that that's a prime anchor area. Yes, you can anchor by the Coast Guard station. It gave them the 2 parameters that you look for. I said, great, I can't wait to see you. I really can't wait to see you. Because we were now taking waves over the helm station. I found the one place on the boat where you don't get wet. It's not the helm. So Richards was actually getting some of the wave action and I was staying dry. Thank you. Thank you, Captain. So we made our turn and then went up to Cape May, all the while in the ocean, which was sporty. And then we went into the Cape May harbor. We saw porpoise, Cape May porpoise, playing in the entranceway. And then there at that last screen, that's where the Coast Guard station is. And so basically here's the Coast Guard, and there is a green marker here and there's a green marker there, and you can anchor anywhere along there. This black line is actually a stone wall. That stone wall. So if you drag your anchor and you're not paying attention, do you see the boat over there? You will sink your boat. That yellow building, that's the Coast Guard station. Saturday night, the wind kept building. We were okay overnight, but at 7 o'clock Sunday morning, we started dragging our anchor. Luckily, I had started getting dressed because Richard said, get up here. So we got up there. We didn't even know how much anchor chain we had. We didn't measure it before we left. So anyway, we hadn't really put it all out. So we picked it up and I said, well, we're just gonna put it all down because there was no room at any marina for us. It was such bad weather that no one left. No one was planning on leaving. So anyway, we set at all 150 feet of chain. It is a sandy bottom and it held. We checked our arc of swing every 10 minutes. I set a timer. We knew that by evening, it was supposed to go down to like 13. So here we're having gusts of over 35. By night, it's supposed to be down to 13. I said, if we can hold till it gets down to 25 or 20, we'll be fine. So we checked every 10 minutes. And we held.
So you can't just rely on electronic,
Not having drug once,
yeah.
and there's a stone wall.
Yeah.
And there's this boat with its mast out of the water going, see what happens if you don't pay attention? So no, it was very apparent to us that this could be a problem. You know, if it hadn't been blowing I mean, yes, normally we go into a harbor, we set an anchor at Port Jeff, we set the alarms and we're fine. But it's not blowing a gale and we haven't just drugged the anchor. So it was one of those days. And Richard going, what do you think we should do? I said, I think we just check it every 10 minutes. If we drag again, then we'll have to figure it out. Well, we didn't drag the anchor again. We stayed put. As I said, we laid all that chain out and it held. And as the day went on, the wind got less. So that was good. Monday and Tuesday were predicted to be like a lake. And they were. So we got up early on Monday. We had reservations at Atlantic City. So this is leaving. And we went up to Atlantic City. Golden Nugget has the marina.
Did you win?
Yeah, I won a place at the marina at that point. I was so glad to be at a dock, tied up. There actually had people there to catch the line. It was like, oh, thank God. And so there's the boat. There's our boat with all of our bumpers down, safely at the dock in Atlantic City. And
I think you're proving something I've noticed many times. Some of the worst experiences in boating make great stories 3 years later. That's how it works.
exactly, you survive it, you're happy, and you can, you've learned something and you move on. Absolutely. And then there's some bigger fishing boats, and then there's some enormous boats. And for some reason, we didn't get pictures of those. There were some that were just ginormous, but everybody was really friendly. In fact, there were 3 boats that were traveling in a group up to Atlantic Highlands, and they said, well, these are our call signs, and you can track us, and we're leaving at 5 in the morning and all this other kind of stuff. I said, great, we'll keep an eye. If we need any help, we'll let you know. Anyway, we're going to dinner. I'm very happy here. I'm not cooking on the boat. I have a great galley on the boat. As I said, it's our 4th boat. It's the first time I actually have an oven on my boat that stays lit. I'm over the moon. I actually have an oven that works. I can cook chicken in it. It's like, oh my God. So actually cooking on my boat is dead easy. But I also like every once in a while to get off the boat, stretch your legs and have dinner out. And we did. So the next day is Tuesday, and we're going up to Atlantic Highlands. I think I woke up about 4:30. We left by 5:15. We had already gassed up the day before, so we were ready to rock and roll. And that's what we did. There is actually no place to go in with a sailboat anywhere up that coast with a height of mast that we have. Motorboats, there's plenty of places to go in, but certainly not a sailboat. And having left at 5:30 in the morning, we made it to Atlantic Highlands by 6:30. It was amazing. It was almost like glass. This was as busy as it was, or as sporty as it got the entire day. Again, we saw wildlife. We saw porpoise. We saw some large fish. I couldn't tell you. I didn't really ever identify what they were. But it was lovely going up the coast. Long, but lovely. And we set an anchor. We found out that the yacht club that we had planned to get a mooring from no longer welcomed catamarans. This is from a fellow who the year before, the 2 years before, had been here and said, oh yeah, come see us, come pick up one of our moorings. So, oh well. But they said, you can anchor at the far end of our mooring field and we'll come get you in the launch. Oh, fine. By this time we've gotten pretty good at setting the anchor. They have a restaurant. There's a municipal restaurant on the beach or on the shore. It started to pour. And at this point, so I really don't need to get entirely wet just for dinner. So we stayed on the boat, but it was a lovely evening. There's a breakwater and we had no problem. So we got up the next morning and made it through New York Harbor. I mean, that was our plan. We knew what time we wanted to hit Hell Gate. Richard actually said we hit it at flood, whatever. I'll show you a picture. What I was amazed at is this is so shallow. So, Anne, when you were talking about the river and it's being this was incredibly sporty, incredibly sporty. We, as a catamaran, we're a little bit more stable in the water than our previous monohulls have been. And we were following some 45, 50-foot boat up into New York Harbor, and they were going like this. I mean, their mast was going from side to side. And I'm glad I'm not on that boat, because I think I'd be seasick. I mean, we were moving, but nothing like that. Sea streaks, yes. Every time I turned around, there was another ferry going around New York Harbor, and they're fast. So, you know, I stayed far enough away from them that it wasn't so bad. It was the cargo ships that I'm not used to seeing, large cargo ships in Long Island Sound. I don't know that I've ever seen a cargo ship in Long Island Sound. So this one was a bit disconcerting. They have traffic separation zones. And basically, if you stay in your side of the zone, you shouldn't have a problem. And we stayed on our side of the zone. It's like, I'm staying in the lane. I don't care what happens. That one's going to be over there. We'll be fine. And we were. Everybody seems to be paying attention to the traffic rules. It's just, there's a lot of shipping. And so the water becomes disturbed. This is just a picture of a tourist boat that we saw once we got into New York Harbor. New York Harbor was less disturbed than the access point getting in.
Do you know if that's Shearwater?
I have no idea. Richard?
Pioneer.
Pioneer? Okay. And Manhattan. And here we are going up by Governor's Island. What did Richard want me to say about Governor's Island? Nothing. He stopped at Atlantic Highlands. We were fine. And here's one of the ferry marinas. They are going 6 ways from Sunday. They're coming in from Brooklyn. They're coming in from Queens. They're jaunting over to Manhattan. And they're just... Well, I had them on AIS. So I'm watching the chart plotter. I'm watching my little blips on AIS. And I'm used to crossing Port Jeff with its ferries. And it never fails when I'm at Port Jeff. There's always a ferry. It doesn't matter what the schedule says. If I'm going to be there, so's the ferry, whether it's coming or going. So I'm kind of used to having to watch out for the ferries because they seem to know when I'm on the water. Anyway, so here's a carousel on the east side of the river. I like this. This was a lifeboat on a tanker. So apparently you jump in and it shoots you off the back of the boat. It looked like an amusement ride to me. And this was just another one of the marinas along the river in New York Harbor, and more of those ferries. We took a lot of pictures of marinas. This is the UN. And then our favorite hospital for special surgery. Rich and I have been there a bit. This is the Empire State Building, the Pepsi Cola sign. And we also have a love of odd buildings. So this is Circle Line, some more odd buildings. There's this. I like this one. Looks knock-kneed. I love this one. And then this is the south end of Roosevelt Island. Roosevelt Island, you have to pass to the west because there is a railroad bridge that is set at, I believe, 50 feet. And again, we're 61 feet. Elizabeth, our daughter, was working on a building down by the river, and she was getting ready to get the entire office to come down and stand on the shore to wave at us. And I had to tell her, sweetheart, you're not going to be able to see us. We're going to be on the other side of Roosevelt Island. So disappointed. Here's the gondola that goes over to Roosevelt Island. And then this is the lighthouse at the north end of Roosevelt Island. And here we're headed to Hell's Gate. This is as bad as it got, which wasn't bad at all. So I have to say that we've been through Hell's Gate a number of times and we've never had a problem. So, which I'm glad. I'm very glad not to have had a problem at Hell's Gate, but I really can't say that I have any understanding of why someone reports having had a problem.
They don't go at the right time.
But this was at Rich says full flood. So who knows? Again, this time we were in a catamaran, so maybe that makes a difference. I wouldn't think so, but it wasn't bad at all. And then here we are looking at the Whitestone, and then the far one is the Throg's Neck, and we're almost home. By this time it's raining, we are soaking wet, but we're almost home. And of course, then we start taking things apart, and we've thrown a fin off of one of our impellers. What a way to say we're home. And that was our trip. Thank you all very much. Well, okay, there we go. Any questions, comments? We had a great time. It took us.
The engine died before you got here, or?
The engine died back in Annapolis. We fixed it.
No,
This is when it got here.
yes.
Yeah. No, we have had various parts come apart, you know, lost limbs off of propellers all summer long. It's one of those things where not having had the boat in the spring where you normally go through it and check and fix everything, we took possession and we wanted to leave Annapolis. We wanted to get home to our home port where we have all our tools and could start working on it. And Lloyd knows we worked on it for many weeks this past summer, fixing the things that you would have addressed in the spring.
And I thought you guys were just always over there mooning.
Yeah, no, sorry. We were actually working away. So it was a summer of doing the kind of maintenance work that you would normally do in the spring if you had the boat in the spring. There were some things that I would say that the owner probably paid someone to do and wasn't really done well. There are some things that we fixed that were not done well at the plant. I mean, we reseated a front window and found out that it hadn't been sealed along the top. No wonder water came in when you put water on the eyebrow. It's like, you know, so I mean, when you're taking waves, you're going to get water that way. What a surprise. So anyway, we reseated that window. So just a bunch of different things that, you know, it's a boat.
That's why they call it a boat.
That's right. It's a boat. Yes, sir.
Did Froggy last till the last dinner?
No, Froggy lasted about mid-July when it was about 99 degrees out. We couldn't catch him to bring him ashore. He went nuts. So Froggy lasted about the end of July. No, he had a burial at sea.
We brought the J105 down the Delaware River above Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And we also went down Delaware Bay, but we did go through
The canal.
Very interesting experience for a sailboat. The controlling depth of that canal, we drew 6.5 feet in that boat. The controlling depth, I think, was 8 feet. But
Very.
that was only right in the center of the canal, and then it shoals off. So we had an expert with us who had done it many times. So we felt okay, except that the big power boats figured that they were bigger, therefore they should be in the middle. That was interesting. The bridge that you said is
50 feet.
is actually 55.
At that point, it still would have gotten us.
But there are big searchlights underneath the bridge, and those go down another 5 feet. So you can get through by
Weaving a line.
weaving around past the searchlight. The other thing is that this is tidal waters, so if it's low tide, it gives you more trouble with the big powerboats. and the
But more
shuttles,
depth,
But it gives you more depth,
more air draft.
more air drift.
Right.
So we had no problem with our 53.5 foot
Okay.
mast getting through there, although we still went around the
Searchlights.
circle.
Well, the system is too wide, but the end of the boom.
To balance, to tilt the boat. We just were too high even to attempt it. And it was extremely sporty conditions to get into Cape May. And as I said, no one left Cape May that weekend. No one. And you could hear people on the radio looking for marina space, looking for dock space, and there was none to be had. So I was very glad that we were able to anchor at the Coast Guard station. There was no other choice. We've gotten very good at anchoring, gotten pretty good at, at docking. I'm pretty happy with that. Yeah, and we fixed a lot of things. I mean, Lloyd just always saw us out there on the mooring with our tool bags fixing something. So we were able to get away for about 5 weeks, the end of August and into September. And we're hoping to get to Maine this coming summer. So we'll see. Any other questions? All right, thank you very much. I appreciate it.